You know, if people care about this work, we do need influencers, and yet there still remains this funny sort of dissonance in my mind. Anyway, I also look at places.
Well, I think there's another dynamic, and here I want to raise the the need to reframe the problem in education from the achievement gap to the empowerment gap. So most people feel pretty powerless about their own education. They don't really feel like they're controlling, except in the terms of, you know, performing. What's learned, the structure of classes, the structure of education. There's, by the way, a wonderful documentary that I am encouraging people to see called If You Build It, about two young design activists, they call themselves, Emily and Matt, who work in a very poor community in North Carolina with kids, creating a different kind of shop class that is electrifying for these kids, because they do things that are significant. They build a farmer's
And they're doing,
market.
not just hearing their lecture.
And, you know, they have to innovate and take initiative. And,
in the community.
so I would say that's an example of empowering education. Most education is not very hands-on. It's not very consequential. You may have a service project, but it's not woven into the center of your education. And I mean, there's some exceptions, but the other dimension that feeds this kind of detachment is that we've developed a very meritocratic, individualist, competitive culture. So people from any kind of cultural community, and this includes African Americans, Latinos, Hmong, also rural whites, religious conservatives, feel in typical culture that they're called upon to abandon who they are. In fact, there's an important study just recently by the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, which documents that college students from working class and cultural backgrounds feel they're being
there's a
asked
brilliant,
to be something else.
And there's such an irony. I was at a talk, in fact, with a Nobel Peace Prize winner at Augsburg this weekend. She was a former president of Latvia. It was a small luncheon, and one of the leaders there is the leader of the Global Leadership Initiative, I believe it was called, or Alliance, or I forget the Madrid Club, the Club Madrid.
Club de Madrid.
Club de Madrid, and she and I were having just a little bit of a debate on what you're talking about, because she was saying, well, in America, what's so brilliant is that I can be an American Spaniard, or I can be a Somalian American, rather, a Spaniard American, Somalian American, African American, Italian American, so forth. And I said, well, I have Somalian friends, and I'm not sure that they always feel that. Yes, again, in language and in what our desire is, I think that's there. But I would agree with you. I think it's a little bit harder in translation in real life.
Well, we've seen education, like other institutions, like businesses and colleges, become more detached from the civic culture and work roles and identities. So that's what we
how are you
would argue
how are you
has to be
addressing this empowerment gap? And what is it, will you just build in a little bit more on what exactly is the empowerment gap? How does that differ from where you were civic engagement as a theorist level and influencers level in academia 5-10 years ago? How is it different now?
Well, there are different ways of thinking about civic engagement or citizenship. The dominant frameworks are either in relationship to government, so you're a citizen as a voter.
Sort of a transactional relationship?
And you have legal rights and benefits. And you're basically a consumer, too.
Right.
And then in the last generation, there's developed what's called a community alternative.
And what is the community
and
alternative?
so that's
quickly?
Things like service projects and volunteerism.
Right.
In schools, it typically is about young people learning to care about other people.
And it's a little bit of awareness raising by
and it's focused on
engaging
values.
with.
So there's a very strong emphasis on the problems in the larger culture, the kind of radical individualism,
taking us out of our boxes.
the incivility, the polarization.
Right.
So in the community or communitarian in conceptual terms approach, you focus on people in communities. So both have strengths. Wouldn't want to dismiss either. But we focus on a third approach, which I would call a work-centered understanding of democracy. So there it's not simply that you participate or that you vote, it's that you build.
And it's not that you only go in for a small segment of time
you're a builder.
or anything.
You're a builder
You're a
of the
co-builder,
society.
co-constructor.
Yeah, you're a builder of the society. So again, to give an example, Humphrey's father saw his life work as a citizen druggist who was building a civic center in the life of Dolan, South Dakota. I mean, there are really rich traditions of that. We just, they've been submerged.
Well, actually, there's rich traditions, and Peter Levine, who was a leader, one of your peers, has talked about. He believes that there's a lot of this going on. We just don't always know what's going on, and I see it. We see it in our community every day, and it doesn't get on the radar of academia or of whomever, and that's a shame for two reasons. First of all, it's good examples, and it's heartening examples that there are people that are co-constructing communities in very useful, important, and purposeful and value-focused ways. So that's really, really good. But if we don't know that that's going on, we can believe that it can't go on. We start to believe that we truly are just consumers, and all we can do is vote. And oh, by the way, with our voting isn't going to really help because of the electoral college, blah blah blah. So we got that. But if the other problem is
powerless.
People feel power. That's the powerless piece, because we don't see that there's actually powerful things going on, even in our own community.
And
we don't see them.
Even so, we've been doing a project with the Kettering Foundation, developing a national dialogue around college and the changing world of work. And if you ask people about that, we've been gathering concerns. People, as students, for example, often feel quite overwhelmed at debt load, at an uncertain job market, at jobs that don't seem very fulfilling.
Right.
Higher cost. But if you pose the question, what can we do about it? Even that simple shift changes the mood a lot. So people start thinking about we rather than me.
Right. I'm not
so
alone in this.
I think you need stories, you need examples, you need
Right.
skill development around how do you build
and there's
relationships.
two things. So what's happening, and Peter Levine has said this, is these are sort of ad hoc. They're sort of, we've got a problem, we're going to go fix it. We're not going to wait for government. We've tried that, we haven't gotten anywhere perhaps, or we're not going to wait for an expert because we can't get one to come out. So we are going to do it, which is very empowering, and you see great transformations. The challenge of them, the second challenge with these groups not being recognized by influencers and leaders, is that they're not given the benefit of some of the great organizing principles that help scale. And I know this is an issue that academia is, how do you scale good things that are going on in a way that they're interconnected? In fact, I'll pitch for WetheP. That's what we want to try to do, is make those introductions and do lot more deeper networking so people can see, so we can sort of bring some of these out into the open and see, here's how this one connects to that one, to this one, to that one. Here's what this one, we need an academic in here with some research, because we really understand how we fit in the bigger picture. Or the academic says, we need you because we need to understand how this works in real world, not just in theory, which is, I sort of rail against that. Forgive me, I tried to, I studied with you, in fact, and would love to have, a PhD. That's nearly looks impossible at this point with my world. But I get so frustrated in academia because as a typical entrepreneur, Bill Gates and all of us, it's just really hard when you're not working. It feels like you're not working, not that you're not learning, not that
higher education is often pretty detached from work, and detached from a civic identity. So if you listen to the language of professionals or academics, they characteristically talk about working with citizens. They don't talk about themselves as citizens.
Yes.
But this is a radical shift over 50 years. So we have a project with the National Science Foundation to rethink the role of science in society, which is recovering and then fleshing out conceptually the old idea of the civic scientist, citizen scientist. So in the soil conservation districts in Minnesota in the 1930s, soil conservation scientists from the University of Minnesota.
Solar conservation?
Soil.
I'm sorry.
Soil erosion. They were told, when you go to Winona or wherever, you don't sound off about soil erosion. What you do is you get to know the community, and you learn its culture and its history and its politics and everyday life, and then you can do things constructive.
You don't come in as the expert. You come in as the researcher, maybe, or the learner.
You have things you know.
Right.
but
Well, of
it's
course.
useful
Yeah. You don't.
knowledge.
It's not. But that's not what you come
But
out.
you don't come in as
communicating
a savior.
first, right.
You're not a savior.
Mm-hmm.
You're a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what
just
we
one
believe.
of the
That has to
populist.
be the future.